Chapter 1: The Return. Evan had no plans to return to Grey Hollow. Ever. This town belonged in the past, along with childhood, scraped knees, and the illusion that life could be simple. But death has a way of changing plans. When the call from the police woke him at 3 in the morning, Evan already knew something irreversible had happened. The voice on the other end was steady, professional, almost mechanical, accented. "Miller, we found your sister. I'm very sorry. Laura, 23 years old. Found near the old coal mine on the edge of town. Official cause of death, opioid overdose." Evan didn't believe a single word. Laura didn't use. She dreamed of going to college, getting out of this hole, becoming someone. She was bright, alive, accented, too alive to just burn out at 23. 2 days later, he sat in the back seat of a beat-up taxi crawling along the broken road to Grey Hollow. Outside the window, bare fields rolled past, rusted fences, abandoned farms. The sky was gray, heavy, as if someone had covered the world with a dirty rag. The driver, a thin man in his 50s with nicotine-stained fingers, was silent the entire ride. But when they entered the town limits, he suddenly braked in the middle of the street. "You walk from here," he muttered without turning around. "What?" Evan frowned. "The house is still 2 kilometers away. I'm not going any further. I'll pay more." The driver shook his head, still avoiding the rearview mirror. "It's not about money. It's just better if you go alone." There was something in his voice that made Evan stop arguing. He grabbed his bag, stepped out onto the empty street, and the taxi tore away as if ghosts were chasing it. Grey Hollow greeted him with silence. Not the peaceful silence of a small town where people know each other and life flows steadily. This was dead silence, oppressive, sticky, as if the air had thickened. There wasn't a soul on the streets. House windows stared with empty sockets. Even the wind seemed frightened. It rustled across the asphalt as if whispering something, but the words were indistinct. Evan walked along the familiar road. Past the old gas station, past the church with peeling paint, past the store that had closed 10 years ago, but still had its sign hanging like a monument to better times. His parents' house stood on the outskirts, right by the forest. Evan stopped at the gate, feeling something tighten in his chest. The house looked like it was dying, faded facade, sagging roof, waste, high weeds in the yard. The windows were closed, but Evan felt as if someone was watching from inside. He pushed the door. It yielded with a plaintive creak. Inside, it smelled of mold, dampness, and something else, accented, metallic, sharp. A smell that hits your nose and makes you wince. Evan turned on the light, but the bulb flashed and immediately went out. He had to take out his phone and use the flashlight. The beam of light picked out pieces of the past from the darkness, the old couch where he and Laura watched movies, the table where their mother served dinners, the stairs leading upstairs. On the walls were long scratches, deep, as if someone had scraped at the plaster with their nails. Evan froze. He didn't remember these scratches. They were fresh. Going up to the second floor, he stopped at Laura's bedroom door. His hand froze on the handle. Memories flooded back all at once, her laughter, the music she played too loud, the smell of her perfume vanilla sweet. He pushed the door open. The room was a mess. Clothes scattered, books lying on the floor, the bed unmade. But there was something about this house that was deliberate, as if someone had been searching for something and hadn't found it. Ivan opened the closet and a diary fell right into his hands. A black notebook in a worn leather binding. He sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. The first pages were ordinary notes about college, about friends, about plans to leave. Laura's handwriting rounded, neat. But the further he read, the more the mood changed. The letters became sharper, the lines more uneven. And the last pages were written as if the hand had been trembling. Accented, he waits beneath the ground. The phrase repeated again and again, filling entire sheets. Between the lines were angular symbols like runes, but not quite. Cruder, more ancient. Ivan felt cold slide down his spine. He closed the diary and stuffed it in his jacket pocket. At that moment, upstairs in the attic, footsteps sounded. Chapter 2 Old Wounds. Morning in Grey Hollow was murky and lifeless. Ivan barely slept all night. He listened to the house creaking, to rustling outside the window, to silence that was too loud. The footsteps in the attic didn't repeat, but the feeling that someone was walking through the house never left him. He decided to start with the Raven's Den bar, the last place Laura was seen alive. The bar was located in the center of town, in an old brick building with peeling paint and a dim sign. Ivan pushed the heavy door and stepped inside. Inside it was dark, smelling of beer and cigarettes. Behind the counter stood Sarah, a girl Ivan had gone to school with. She looked up and went pale. "Ivan." Her voice trembled. "You shouldn't have come back. I need to know the truth about Laura." Sarah shook her head, lowering her gaze. Accented, "No one here will tell you anything." "Why?" She didn't answer. At that moment, a man approached the counter, broad-shouldered, with an unshaven face and tired eyes. Matt, Evan's best friend from childhood. They hadn't seen each other in over 10 years. Matt nodded, but there was no joy in his face. "Heard you came back." "Matt." Evan extended his hand, but Matt didn't shake it. He just looked at him with a heavy gaze. "You've got no business here, brother. Leave while you can." "Laura's dead." "I'm not leaving until I know what happened." Matt looked around, checking if anyone was listening, then leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Raider hasn't forgotten about you. And he didn't want Laura digging around in the mine." Ivan felt something tighten in his chest. "Raider's still here. He never left. He runs the town. The police. Everyone." "What did Laura find in the mine?" Matt paused, then exhaled heavily. "I don't know exactly. But after that trip, she was like she stopped being herself. Said strange things. That she heard voices. That someone was calling her." Sarah added quietly without raising her eyes. "It's better not to dig here, Evan. Grey Hollow doesn't like those who ask questions." Evan left the bar with a heavy feeling in his chest. The town seemed to be closing in around him, ready to suffocate anyone who tried to uncover its secrets. Accented, but he wasn't going to give up. Chapter 3 Voices. That evening, Evan went up to the attic again. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. The flashlight beam picked out old boxes, cobwebs, cracked boards from the darkness. The attic was empty, but on the floor, right by the dormer window, was a footprint. Fresh, wet, a barefoot print. Smell like Laura's. Evan froze. His heart was beating so loud it seemed the echo carried through the entire house. He crouched down, reached out his hand. The print was cold, almost icy. At that moment, the window burst open with a crash. Wind rushed inside, knocking dust from the beams. Evan jumped up, spun around. Nothing. Only darkness beyond the window and the rustle of trees. But he heard it, a quiet, barely perceptible voice. Accented even. Laura's voice. He ran out of the house, gasping for air. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He sat on the porch, covered his face with his palms. This isn't real. This can't be real. But the footprint was real. The voice was real. And for the first time in many years, Evan felt genuine fear. Chapter 4 Reader's Shadow. The next evening, Evan was grabbed. He was walking from the house to the bar when two burly guys in dark jackets came around the corner. One of them, with a scar across his entire cheek, nodded. "The boss wants to talk." Evan tried to break free, but the second one punched him in the stomach. The world swayed. They shoved him into a car and drove him to the outskirts to an old warehouse. Inside it smelled of chemicals, accented sharp to the point of tears. Raider sat in the shadows in an old chair, like a king on a throne of rust and dirt. He had barely changed, the same massive torso, cold eyes, predator's smile. "Miller," he smirked. "You were always in the way. And so was your sister. What did you do to her?" Evan's voice trembled with rage. "Me?" Raider leaned back in his chair. "Nothing. The town took her itself." "What does that mean?" Raider leaned forward and something flickered in his eyes. "Fair. She went where she shouldn't have. Heard what shouldn't be heard. The mine. It's not just a hole in the ground, Miller. There's something there. Something old." Evan lunged forward, but the thugs grabbed his arms. Accented, "Let him go." A voice from the darkness. "Matt." He burst into the warehouse, with a piece of rebar in his hands, and hit one of the guys on the head. He collapsed. Matt pushed Evan toward the exit. "Run." "What about yo?" "I'll stay. Someone has to hold them off." Evan ran outside, hearing shouts and sounds of struggle behind him. He knew Matt probably wouldn't make it out alive. But there was nowhere to run. Except one place. The mine. Chapter 5 Into the Abyss. The forest met him with dead silence. No birds, no wind, only the rustle of dry leaves underfoot. Evan walked along the path he remembered from childhood. This was where he and Laura had played, built shelters, laughed. Now the forest seemed alien. He came out to a clearing where an old sign stood, "Danger. No entry." Behind it, the entrance to the mine. Rusty rails, sagging beams, the black maw of the tunnel. On a nearby tree was carved a symbol accented the same one from Laura's diary. Evan took out his flashlight and stepped inside. The air in the mine was damp, cold, saturated with the smell of rot. The walls were covered with mold and strange marks as if someone had scratched them with claws. Evan went deeper, feeling the pressure build as if the earth was compressing around him. And then he heard them. Voices. Not an echo. Not wind. Voices. Many voices, whispering simultaneously, merging into one hum. The words were indistinct, but Evan felt the meaning with his skin accented a call. Strong, sticky, pulling downward. He descended even lower and found a room. In it were traces of recent presence, extinguished candles, empty bottles, syringes. On the walls, the same symbols, drawn in paint and blood. Raider had used this place. He brought teenagers here, intimidated them with voices, controlled them through fear and drugs. But Evan understood Raider hadn't invented the voices. They were real. Footsteps behind him. Evan turned. Raider stood in the passage, with a gun in his hand. I told you not to dig. She found something. Something even you're afraid of. Raider smirked, but his eyes were full of horror. Accented Laura went deeper. Where even I don't go. She opened a door. And what's behind it? He fell silent, licked his lips. She didn't come back alone. What do you mean? You'll see for yourself soon enough. They clashed. A blow, another blow. The gun fell, rolled into the darkness. They rolled on the dirty floor, trying to strangle each other. And then the earth trembled. Final, what waits? From the depths of the mine came a sound accented low, vibrating, as if the earth itself groaned. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. And from the darkness crawled the shadow. Not a creature. Not a human. Just a shadow, black, dense, alive. It moved against the light as if devouring it. Evan heard in it thousands of voices merging into one scream. Raider screamed. The shadow wrapped around him, pulled him into itself, and he disappeared as if he had never existed. Evan ran. Ran through tunnels, stumbling, falling, getting up. Behind him, beams collapsed, vaults caved in. He got outside at the last second, fell to the ground gasping. The mine collapsed behind him, raising a cloud of dust and dead air. The police declared it an accident. Matt was found dead, heart attack. Sarah disappeared. The town became quieter. Evan left on the third day. At the Grey Hollow border, he looked in the rearview mirror. And saw her. Laura stood on the roadside. Exactly as she had been in life. Only her eyes were too dark. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just watched. And Evan understood he had taken the darkness with him.